Hello and welcome to episode 257 of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
I'm Bill, and this is one of my favorite times of year because I'm watching all these tournaments to see who the Davids are that are going to get in the tournament. So today I watched Longwood, and I didn't even know where Longwood was. And Longwood's in Virginia, and they won their first trip to the March Madness when they beat Winthrop, and Winthrop had won that conference a couple years in a row. But Longview had a lot of transfers from major D1 schools.
Oh,
So
wow.
they were pretty good. But I watched that, and I'll watch some more this week. I always like that week. I like when it gets into, you got a team that had no shot, and all of a sudden, if everything breaks right, they're going to get in. And I've always enjoyed that about it. And then conference tournaments, if there's upsets, it knocks, hurts other teams. So it's a fun time of year.
It is. Are you going to do a poll? Well, you guys do your
Yeah,
eight
we
man,
do it
right?
when we get assigned. But yeah, I might actually do a poll this year. I've never done one of the ESPN things. I might actually do that. And then last night, I told you I watched the Duke, North Carolina, and I would have bet my house, my car, and everything else before the game that Duke would have won. And I was shocked that North Carolina won, but I found myself rooting for North Carolina.
I think our household in general has always pulled for North Carolina and the Duke rivalry.
We have. I mean, I've always enjoyed the point guards from North Carolina. They had another great one last night.
And I know
It's fun to watch. I mean, it's fun. Those guys weren't intimidated. They went in there with a plan, and they executed it, and they played really, really well.
both those universities are made up of basically the same, probably breakdown if you did economic breakdown of the kids that go there. But Duke has always felt more like the snobbier of the two schools for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then when you add in, obviously Leitner and Reddick and just the way they came off, and and then Grayson Allen and some, they're spunky white guys at Duke all the time. It's just been kind of annoying.
They have had annoying players. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And some were there last night. J.J. Reddick was there in the stands last night. Leitner was there in the stands last night.
And J.J. Reddick is.
Ken Jong and Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, wow. And Reddick has become somebody I really enjoyed. And he's a really good podcaster, too, by the way, if you want a nice NBA podcast.
Yeah, he's a smart guy. He's knowledgeable.
Yeah.
He played the game well.
I'm sure Stephen A. is trying to get him blackballed on ESPN because he keeps showing Stephen A. up, and Stephen A. doesn't have an ego, So it'll be interesting to see. But JJ will go after him, which I enjoy the few times I watch.
And then the pro game has been pretty good this week, too.
Well, the Harden trade is looking really nice for Philadelphia right now.
It is.
It's amazing. Harden is one of those guys that he's never diesel or ripped or anything, but he looked fat and out of shape again in Brooklyn. In his first game in Philly, it looked like he had already dropped 10 pounds.
He just is. It always seems that wherever he goes for a while, he is a fantastic player.
Oh, he's the perfect honeymoon player.
Yes, he is.
And
then things deteriorate.
Yeah, but the other big part of the Philadelphia experience is Tyrese Maxey, who was filling in for Ben Simmons all year, has been absolutely phenomenal. And he's been even better with Harden. Now they almost have like a big three that you didn't see coming because you didn't, no one expected Tyrese Maxey to be the third star of a big three, but he's averaging over 20 points a game. And 5 rebounds, 5 assists. He's playing good defense.
Yeah, it's nice to be the third option when you got Embiid and you got Harden, and people are going to have to really pay attention to them and cheat their direction. And so it's going to make it good if he can deliver, and he's delivered.
He has. And then meanwhile, Ben Simmons has yet to debut, and it might not be for a couple more weeks. KD is back, and KD looks like KD again, which wasn't surprising. KD's the greatest scorers of all time. But despite New York doing what they did, for some reason Kyrie's not grandfathered in or something. Is that what's the story?
I forget what the exact story is. Oh, it's private.
Private. So Kyrie still can't play home games.
Right.
And then as people are pointing out right now, just because it's all lining up, is that if the season ended right now, Brooklyn would have to go to Toronto to play in the play-in game, where Kyrie can't play And Gordon Dragic, who didn't want to play for Toronto, will have to fill in for Kyrie on Brooklyn in Toronto against the team he decided wasn't good enough for him. So
Yeah, there's a nice soap opera right there.
it's a nice soap opera right there. And who knows if Ben Simmons will be there or what Ben Simmons will be when he gets back. As Katie said, like, because people keep trying to ask him, how long does it take a team to gel? And he's like, there's not a formula for team gelling. He's like, he's like, you get the right mix of guys. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. Sometimes it takes a couple of years. He's like, you just don't know. And that's really true.
Sometimes it never happens.
And sometimes it never happens. And like we talked about, it looks like in Philadelphia, it was just a love fest from day one, and it seems to work.
And as we're sitting here talking, switching back, the number one South Carolina Gamecocks lost the SEC championship to Kentucky today.
Oh, wow. Oh, there you go.
Big upset. And I turned it off. They were up 14 points toward the end of the third quarter. So
Crazy. And then we have to mention the two dark horse teams in the East and the West of, the Celtics, who just put it on Brooklyn today with Tatum scoring 54 points, and Tatum was playing it out of his, Tatum is looking like the Tatum that people keep telling me he can be lately. And then Dallas in the West with Luka just on fire, and that team really clicking and gelling.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way Dallas is playing. I haven't seen much of Boston, but I see Dallas on numerous occasions, and I love the way. I've loved Luka. Luka would always be my candidate. Everybody's my candidate every year for MVP, but he just doesn't have enough going on around him to get enough attention.
And he's not doing himself any favors coming in a little bit fat and out of shape every year to start. Because he sort of plays himself into shape, and then...
He's not exactly chiseled.
No. But like I said, when you come in and you look like you weren't trying in the offseason, like that narrative of you being an MVP candidate goes away pretty quickly. But, people are reporting that Porzingis was a real locker room annoyance to everybody, and that his presence being gone has been a big boost to the team just from a morale standpoint. So, but yeah, Jason Tatum is playing absolutely phenomenal. Robert Williams has found a way to stay on the floor a little bit longer. And both those teams are really high ranked in defense, both the Mavs and the Celtics. And the Derek White trade was a really nice trade for the Celtics. He's not a flashy guy, but...
And out of the blue, the Lakers won last night.
With LeBron scoring 56.
And supposedly, the assistant coaches want to bench Russ, and the head coach doesn't want to bench Russ.
Yeah. Have you watched any of Russ's press conferences lately?
Yeah, they're getting kind of irritating.
Yeah, I think if you're Frank Vogel, you're on a sinking ship. You probably are not the coach next year. You're just doing the best you can right now. And as bad as everything is with the AD injury, with LeBron doing his passive-aggressive LeBron bullshit stuff that is pretty annoying, and watching the way, Russ has handled a lot of the criticism, which has not been great lately, I think if you benched him right now, I think that would just destroy, And the other thing is people point out, who are you benching him for?
It's true. I mean, it's not like you got a better solution.
No.
It's just hard to believe that his skills would have declined that quickly. And it's hard to believe that this team that you and I both thought was going to be a real championship contender has just fizzled.
If I was Russ's agent / PR person, now granted, if I went to Russ and said this, he'd probably fire me. But if I was Russ, I would come out and say, I'd talk to LeBron, I'd talk to Frank Vogel, and just sort of see what the tea leaves said. But if everyone sort of thought the best thing for me would be to run the second unit and sort of be the instant offense off the bench, I would let Russ come out. Like when you work with actors in the I've got some birds. When you work with actors, one of the things you have to do is you have to let them think things are their idea. But if you let Russ take credit, like Russ is just saying, like, look, we're not a great fit right now. I'm going to do everything I can to be the best teammate I can. And I think the best way for me to do that is to, be the best off the bench player. Because then Russ gets to save a little face, like, even if it's technically the coach's idea and LeBron's idea, like, because I think, if Russ is running that second unit by himself, giving LeBron a rest, being the offense, I think that's probably the best for him. And then you let Russ sort of be this is what I am deciding.
Yeah.
Even if, 5 days later, Stephen A comes out and it's like, I got sources inside the league that tell me that, but whatever, but,
No, it's something that should be considered. I mean, if his ego would let him consider that.
Yeah, but again, I'm trying to give him the best out for his ego, where he gets to be the one to announce that,
Yeah,
I think this is what's best for our team right now. Who knows what's going to happen next year in the future? But I'm just trying to help my team win. So,
yeah, he's got to be puzzled by
yeah,
what's happened.
I really
Legitimately
thought,
puzzled.
him, running the offense when him was out, and then running pick and rolls and doing the kind of stuff he did in Washington with LeBron and AD because they can both shoot would have been fantastic. We both did, but it's not.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
No.
Yeah, stay tuned. And meanwhile, the Warriors are really struggling without Draymond.
Yeah.
And I think that's 9 or 10 losses in their last 10 or 11 games.
And, for all the excitement of Klay coming back, like, Klay's missed almost 2 complete seasons of basketball. Like, it's a long time not to play,
Yes, it is.
And it's great when we see flashes of Klay, But he's not the player he was, 3 years ago.
No.
And it's not to say he won't be 6 months from now or 9 months from now, but he's not right now. And I don't know how long it's going to take him to get back to that point, but yeah. It's true.
We got about a month of the regular season left. And then we start the playoffs.
Yeah. And we can transition to baseball with this thing, but I was thinking, like, we talked about how most of the baseball stories have been negative.
Mm-hmm.
Even when the NBA story is negative, like with, the Harden stuff, he gets to be a villain you get to root against. The negative is a positive. Like, as much as you don't, because for every, everybody like him, you still got, Miami, the Heat culture. You got Ja Morant and the, this lovable squad. Like, you have enough people that aren't Harden that makes Harden a great guy to root against.
There's a lot of good stories in the NBA this year.
Yeah.
That are kind of, Chicago Bulls and the Cavaliers. A lot of good stories.
So that even when the negative story of Harden comes out, it kind of is a good story. Because now it's like, okay, now I know who I'm rooting against in the playoffs.
Yeah. I don't like him.
Yeah. And I like him even less now. And it's perfect. Now I get to root against him.
Yeah.
But what do we'll talk about some of the things the league proposed. And I was going to tell you what it would take for me to watch baseball. But what do you think of the 14-team playoffs?
If you're going to have 14 teams in the playoff, why are you going to play 162 games?
Yeah.
So I don't. You've always bragged about how you determine the championship based upon the number of regular season games you play. Now you're not. So fine. I'm okay with that. Let's just reduce the number of regular games then.
Yeah, because
if they're not as important, you want to have more playoffs. Have more playoffs.
Because it used to be just the division winners, no wild cards in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And then the wild card was kind of fun, as a pirate, whatever you want to call it, pirate fan-ish person, born in Pittsburgh, whatever. It was nice that, that next, especially if you were in a division where you were clearly the second best team in the league, but you were playing, you had 110 wins and the next team that was going to win the division had 80 and you were going to miss the playoffs. So it was nice to see those teams get in the wild card.
Well, in my lifetime.
But 14, now you're like hockey.
In my lifetime, it had 2 teams.
Oh.
Whoever won the American League and whoever won the National League was in the World Series. That was it. Then they went to divisional play in the late 60s.
Okay. But yeah, 14.
And then we added wild cards. And now we're going to add a whole bunch of wild cards.
Yeah.
And the other thing today is I saw that the players said it's okay if MLB proposes gives them 45 days notice to propose a rules change.
Yeah. I mean, again, like lots of things in this life, like it's easy to say one way or the other, but I mean, if it's a good rule change, then yeah, 45 days is plenty of time. If it's a controversial one, then no. So.
Well, I guess the one that's going to be controversial is the pitch clock, where you're going to have 14 seconds if there's nobody on base and 19 seconds if there's a runner on base to pitch.
Yes.
But, it needs to be done.
Yeah.
The game is too long. It just drags.
And like they said, watching
somebody sitting in there adjusting their batting gloves 5 times after 5 pitches.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that need to change. I mean, it just does. You're not going to, you can't have somebody's attention for a 4-hour baseball game, or even a 3-hour baseball game.
No.
We need to be in between 2 and 2.5 hours.
See, that was some of my. So I was thinking what it would take for me to watch baseball.
Okay, what would it take?
I think, I mean, first off, I like the shortened season. So I was saying you start in May, end in September, which I know is only 5 months, but you're not getting anybody outside of the hardcore baseball people. You're not getting any of us until May. Hockey playoffs, NBA playoffs.
You lose a lot of people when the NFL season starts.
You do, but at the very least, if we started, in May when it's sort of that dead time, maybe you hook some people. You definitely stick with the pitch clock. You need the pitch clock because, like we talked about, you just talked about art. Like you can't have people adjusting the batting glove, stepping out. I even like the proposal of no throws over to first. It's very. I mean, it's very rarely exciting. So a way shortened season. You reset the record book. Like I know this would be the most controversial take I'm talking about, but obviously if it's a shorter season, you've got to redo the records. But the records, between the steroid era and everything else, they're already out the window anyway. So you almost start like from scratch. This is based on Cousin Kaylee when she was on, and I've heard other people talk about this too. We know who the NBA players are, the NFL players are. We love them, their personalities. They sell this, they put butts in seats, as they say. And Major League Baseball just doesn't do it. And it was the same with F1. But F1 did that Netflix show. And I think Major League Baseball needs to embrace, modern storytelling and get their own Netflix show. Or Hulu, or whoever they want to go with.
Like the NFL did with Hard Knocks and all that other stuff too, right?
Right. Exactly. Let us meet the players behind the scenes. And then the F1 show, I think they're a little loose with, the edit, if you will. And I don't think that would be bad for baseball as far as creating some storylines and things along those lines,
Okay.
I think you have to quietly put analytics to bed, not in practice necessarily, but in terms of the game being discussed in analytical ways. I think it turns off a lot of people, and the other people it doesn't turn off, it just alienates them. Because part of the joy of sports is the arguing about sports. And baseball has been the most adamant about their analytics and how this is just is the truth. I think on the field you get rid of the shift, maybe make shifts illegal. It's not fun. I know it's effective, obviously. I think it's a little bit like with the NBA and some of the foul calling that they got rid of. Like, yes, that was the hunting fouls was good for. And the way the game, for if you're going to win games, but it's not good for people continuing to watch games.
Right. So position players have to stay in their positions.
Position players stay in their positions, and you just make sure that you try to make sure there's a voice that you sort of like let the analytics people help with the draft, stay in the background, but get them out of the mainstay conversations. Stop talking WAR and WAP, and let's get back to talking about batting average and home runs and RBI. Things that are quantifiable that the average person can understand and make sense to them.
It's a good argument, Jason. Go ahead, keep going.
Let's see, did I have anything else on my list? The May September, the record reset. Because I think the record reset is fun too. No shifts, pitch clock, Netflix show like F1. And I think that would that might hook me. Because again, I'm a sports fan. I've fallen off baseball. But now maybe I get back in a little bit,
I'm going to add the robot umpires.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to add the lasers and everything and make sure the strike zone is consistent.
Very much. Very important.
And the best stat I heard all week was, and I tweeted about this, the Pirates beat the Yankees in the 1960 World Series. The score was 10-9. You know what was interesting about the 10-9?
What's that?
0 strikeouts in the entire game, and the game was 2.5 hours long.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it was 10-9. So you had plenty of offense.
Oh, yeah.
You just didn't have a lot of strikeouts.
Right.
So pretty amazing that you could have a World Series game without any strikeouts.
It makes a lot of sense. It's exciting, yeah.
Yeah, I'm all over this. Good ideas, good suggestions.
Yeah, well, I was trying to think really hard about, because I remember being a kid, I played Little League, I enjoyed baseball, I collected baseball cards. It was there, and it went away,
Yeah, it did.
And the last time I watched a ton of baseball was when I was a bartender in college in Massachusetts. And, the Red Sox are an institution in Massachusetts. Like, Boston is not a place that needs to worry about Major League Baseball and having Major League Baseball fans.
Right.
Like, there's certain places you go and it's so ingrained in the culture that it's going to take a long time to uproot it. Whereas, the rest of the country and getting, and again, I know the money still appears to be really good, but on the outside looking in, it still seems kind of weird that that's still happening.
Okay, and my other suggestion, we talked about last week, I want a floor that you have to pay at least this much money in salaries.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even mention the money part. That's important.
I want a floor.
Yeah. Oh, and then obviously get rid of the bullshit where I can hold you out for the first 3 months of the season and get an extra year out of you.
Yeah.
I think that's going to leave anyway. But
yeah.
that's
still that's unfair. It's unfair to the fans too.
Yeah. Because you're all excited about well, now we can talk about
solid ideas.
Yeah. One of the reasons I wouldn't be watching baseball right now is NFL draft.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the man from Georgia.
Yeah. 340 pounds, ran a 4.840.
And I watched him, and he didn't look that fat for 340 pounds.
No, I would say, between him, the two offensive lineman prospects, the kid out of Alabama and the kid out of North Carolina State, you look at Aaron Donald when he took his shirt off at the parade, the new 300 pounds is a very different 300 pounds.
Yeah. But no, I really what's the guy's name, Davis?
Yeah, Jordan, yeah.
I really liked it, and he really definitely made himself some money by working out at the combine because I think he's helping reposition himself from a 2-down player to a 3-down player, which would mean he'd go higher in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know there's some questions about his endurance and can he stay on the field for that many plays, so we'll have to see that. But I think he made a big statement for himself.
I think he made a huge statement, yeah. And then, unfortunately, as a Steeler fan, the other guy that made a big impact, I think, is Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty.
Yep.
Both on and off the field, in the locker room, on the streets, giving away, things out of his bag to homeless people.
Yep.
And
showing off the big arm.
An absolute cannon of an arm. He didn't run the 40, but we know he's going to be fast. That's not even really a question for him. And then apparently he's been doing, he's the kind of person, they say people, he's I listened to the Ringer's NFL draft show and they've always talked about just the cool quality and that, what they talk about Brady or Burrow or some of these guys, it was clear they were the coolest person in the room. And they said Malik Willis has that quality where you just want to, that's part of the leadership ability. You have the magnetism people are drawn to.
Yeah, and I watched more of the combine this year because I know how interested you are in it, and I wanted to make sure I watched some so we could talk about it. But I'm not so sure how some of the drills translate. But the skill sets, we don't ever see the interviews, so we don't know about the interviews. We don't know what's going on. We don't know the questions are asked or how they respond.
No, we only get the bad questions when they leak out.
Yeah, but the speed things and the jumping things and the agility things and watching, there was a lot of fast players in that combine.
There were. And then, it seems like we've learned that, if you're a pass rusher, the three cone drill, that's where we need to know. Because that's your change of direction, that's bending, that's getting low, hand size, as we've learned. For anyone that wants to know your hand size, if you take a sheet of regular printer paper or your standard sheet of paper, it's 8.5 by 11. So you just stretch your hand across the piece of paper and you can see if you're 8.5 like Kenny Pickett from your thumb to your pinky, making it as wide as possible. I have slightly over 10-inch hands based on the NFL standard, so I'm a draftable player.
You get the biggest hands in the family.
Yeah, I think so. But I just was looking, I was like, because I think it's fun when they do stuff where if you're the person watching at home and it's like, well, how do I know how big my hands are? And it's like, take your, everybody has a piece of printer paper at home. Take it out, stretch across it. If you're above 8.5, you have bigger hands than Kenny Pickett. I did like him in interviews, though. I thought Kenny Pickett came off well.
I thought Kenny Pickett came off well. I thought Malik Willis came off well.
I like Matt Corral.
I like Matt Corral a lot, but we're not going to get to see. We didn't get to see him with wait for his pro day.
No,
but I've liked him for a couple of years at Ole Miss.
and
I like how he plays the game. I think he's fun to watch. But he's not that much bigger than Baker Mayfield. So I mean, you always run into that kind of concept as well.
Yeah, I mean that's been the knock on Corral the entire time is can that guy stay on the field? Playing the way he plays, and or if he's on the field, is he like Baker Mayfield last year with his arm in a sling? Playing.
So are we like 7 weeks away from the draft?
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah.
And the free agency budge is starting. And
free agency starting, and there'll be some maneuvering.
And
it is fun to watch. The NFL has made themselves 365.
They have.
They've done a really good job making themselves 365. And again, you can criticize baseball because they have a tough time being 180.
Exactly.
365.
And I learned about speed score and the importance of, what speed score is?
Mm-hmm.
They take your weight and adjust it to your 40. So they're more impressed with like 6'2", 220 running a 4.4 than, 180 running a 4.3. Because if you can get that amount of mass going that quickly, they'd rather have, bigger, faster, strong.
Sure. They'd rather have the bigger guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was impressed. Some of the receivers were really big and they were fast.
Yeah.
I thought one guy was a tight end. He was a wideout.
I think that's one reason that Amari Cooper's getting cut this year. I mean,
It's a deep draft.
It's a deep draft, and it seems like receiver. Seems like it's slowly. The Steelers have been on it for years, but with their picks. But it seems like receivers being one of those like. There's 10 or 15 guys in every draft that can play day one in the NFL. Now you're not going to get a lot of Jordan Jefferson, Jamar Chases, but as far as your Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Steelers, not to throw Steelers out there, like there's guys.
Yeah.
And it also sounds like in other news that, the Dolphins owner never wanted Deshaun Watson and that mess. So the Texans might be stuck with him.
Well, nobody's going to take a trade on him until you know what you're liable for and what how many games he's going to miss.
Yeah, and I know there's some fan bases that will eventually just forget, but, it's an ugly situation.
20's a big number.
20's a big number.
10's a big number, but 20's a ridiculously big number.
Yeah, if I'll admit, and this is a terrible thing, but as a Steeler fan, if it was 1 or 2, then maybe be like, well, maybe that's just people trying to go after a rich, famous person. But 24 is just, and then you hear the details and you're like, no, this is just, it's not somebody I want to root. I want to root for my team to win, and he's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's like 26, and he's, everything you want in an NFL player, but I don't really want him on my team. And I'm sure there's a lot of owners that feel that way, and then they're also wondering, like, how do we, is there a way to turn this slimy guy into something people are going to root for? And I don't know if that's possible.
No, he's been damaged. He's been sitting out a year.
Yeah.
And again, you get the Clay Thompson factor. If you're sitting out a year, you're going to be rusty.
Yeah.
I don't know how much value you're going to be that first year anyhow.
Unless you just embrace the grossness of Vegas, and be like, what happens here stays here, and that's why he's our quarterback. And you go real dark with it. Other than that, I think you just avoid him.
Yeah. What do you got for entertainment, Jay?
I have very positive entertainment. Scream 2022, the new one. I think it's just called Scream again. Or not Scream again, but just the title, Scream. Yeah. They introduced the term requel, which is the combination of reboot.
Yeah, I like that term a lot.
And this isn't spoilery, but it's just talking about how, we have these reboot sequels where we want to bring the new. You got Ghostbusters, where you've got all the original Ghostbusters are back to sell the new Ghostbusters, and you got the Star Wars, where they can't stop putting Luke, Leia, and Han in all the movies. They don't want to move on. Like you're afraid to sacrifice, what got you there in the first place, but you kind of need to move on. And I thought this movie did it as well as any, and then they were very meta. And I think I made this comparison to both you and Mom. Like, I think the Scream formula is a really good formula. It's an Agatha Christie movie mixed with a slasher movie from the 80s. So you're getting the 10 Little Indians, you're getting the whodunit, and you have all the suspects on the screen, like a Knives Out is a more modern example, I guess, than Agatha Christie. And then you also get the jump scares and the blood and the horror of a horror movie. And, mix in a little, meta humor, and you've got a really good formula for a good movie.
Yeah, so you'd rate it pretty high. You'd recommend it.
I highly recommend. I mean, especially, if you're a fan of the, of the original Scream and the first, maybe the first two sequels after that, not the ones that have, subsequent ones, but.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I told you I watched the first episode of
Yeah.
which is made by the producers and directors of Lost. And I didn't watch Lost, but you did, and you really loved Lost, and Mom loved it too. And I thought From was a pretty good horror flick.
Okay.
So I enjoyed the first one. I guess I'll watch it through. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done.
And this is sad because I just watched it like an hour ago, but there's a new Australian show from Netflix or on HBO Max. So far, it's a little mystery. It's pretty good so far. It's very Australia, which I enjoy. And then it's basically, this is in the trailer, so this isn't spoilers. You watch a guy get run over or run off the road by a tractor trailer. Car flips over. He wakes up in the hospital. Has no idea who he is, and now he's trying to figure out who he is. I mean, that's a tried and true formula of movie watching. Is why are people trying to? Who is this person? Why are they trying to kill him? He's trying to slowly put his life back together and piece the pieces together. Mystery.
The last thing I want to mention that on March 17th, Turner Classic Movies is putting The Quiet Man in movie theaters as a celebration of the 60th anniversary of the movie The Quiet Man. One of my favorite John Wayne movies, and definitely my father's favorite John Wayne movie. And so I'm going to actually go to the theater, and I'm going to go watch it. I've never seen it in the theater. I want to go. I'm going to go with some friends while I'm in Pittsburgh, but it seems pretty appropriate to do it on St. Patrick's Day, and I probably anticipate Turner Classic being involved in doing a really good job with it. So it'll be just more than a movie on the screen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's about it for this week. But
any food for you?
Sadly, no food for me. We're trying to go healthy after a really crazy weekend up through Mardi Gras. Trying to get the eating back under control. We sort of went with the spirit of New Orleans for the last month.
Gotcha.
And overindulged in many sugary, delicious foods. So.
Well, I smoked a prime rib on a Traeger yesterday. It turned out really, really well. And I'm on my way to the Bay Area. I'll be in Santa Clara, so I don't know what I'll be having, but I know I'll make a stop at the Black Bear Diner and probably have some turkey. Enjoy the Black Bear Diner as a chain. It's a great, wholesome, home-cooked meals food kind of a diner place.
Sounds very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be watching, as many of these conference championships as I can. And then next weekend when I'm back in Tampa, I'm going to go to 3 of the SEC tournament games, 1 on Friday and 2 on Saturday.
All right.
So I'm looking forward to that, seeing some really good basketball. And it's some evenly matched teams. I mean, anybody can win the Southeast Conference tournament. So I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Well, once again,
prepare to go to Pittsburgh for my first round of March Madness games with my buddies.
There you go. Once again, thank everybody who supports us on Patreon. Really appreciate it. Helps us keep the show going. And please contact us through Patreon, through my dad's Twitter, wherever you want to do to let us know. Like if you want to come on the show, if you have topics you want us to discuss, especially, it's where we talked about it may get a little leaner moving forward. So,
Maybe
hit us
we'll
up.
have a book segment, Jay.
Okay.
I'm reading a bunch of things I think are interesting now. We'll do a book segment.
Yeah, I think so. All right. So until
All right,
next
everyone,
week.
have a good week.